you find yourself lost in a forest from 350 million years ago, a world without dinosaurs. But nightmares still lurk everywhere. In the skies, giant dragonflies with wingspans close to 3 feet circle like hunting birds. On the ground, millipedes over 6 feet long crawl across the damp swamp floor. And in the shadows, massive scorpions with deadly stingers wait in silence. This is the Carboniferous, an age when Earth belonged to bizarre creatures unlike anything seen before. About 359 to 299 million years ago, Earth entered the Carboniferous period, an age completely different from today. There were no grassy plains, no flowers, and no dinosaurs. Instead, there were vast swamps and dense primeval forests. Lycopod trees rose over 100 feet tall, giant ferns thrived, and horsetails grew in clusters like bamboo, forming a dark maze where little sunlight could pass through. The atmosphere contained as much as 30 to 35% oxygen, far higher than the 21% of today. This made the air thick, likely overwhelming if a modern human tried to breathe it, while also making the forests extremely flammable. A single lightning strike could turn the waterlogged forest into a sea of fire, with black smoke covering the skies. Wildfires became part of a natural cycle. Forests burned, then regrew lush and green within just a few decades. In this stifling world, life still flourished, opening the door to a surprising wave of evolution. This was an age of giant insects and colossal invertebrates, being so large that if you met them now, you'd think you had stumbled into a horror movie. Dragonflies with wingspans over 2 feet soared across the skies. Millipedes as long as a human body twisted and crawled beneath your feet, and giant scorpions prowled in the shadows. Together, they created a world both majestic and terrifying. But the Carboniferous was not only about monstrous creatures, it also marked a major turning point in evolution. The rise of the first vertebrates truly adapted to life on land. Amphibians, once tied to the water, thrived and diversified. Some of them evolved into the earliest reptiles, small creatures that carried a world-changing secret, the amniotic egg. This egg, with its protective membrane, allowed embryos to develop without returning to the water. It opened an entirely new frontier for animals to conquer the land. The Carboniferous was like a grand stage, where colossal forests, oxygen-rich skies, raging wildfires, and bold new life forms came together to shape a world unlike any other. It set the stage for a bizarre age, where giant insects, monstrous scorpions, and titanic millipedes ruled the earth in their own way. If one symbol defines the Carboniferous above all else, it's the rise of gigantic arthropods. The oxygen-rich atmosphere acted like rocket fuel, allowing small creatures to become giants. With no birds yet in existence, the skies became the exclusive domain of these winged giants. Look up and you would see swarms of Paleodictyoptera gliding overhead. Their name means ancient netwing, taken from the intricate patterns across their wings, like spiderwebs embroidered with sunlight. On average, they had wingspans of 16 inches, with some individuals stretching past 20 inches, nearly 10 times the size of a modern dragonfly. Unlike most modern insects, they had not just 2 main pairs of wings, but also small lobes near their heads, like extra mini-wings, possibly helping them balance in flight. They were the first true test pilots of evolution, marking the moment when creatures learned to master the air. Despite their strange appearance, Paleodictyoptera fed only on tree sap and plant fluids. Harmless to humans, yet the sight of huge, ancient butterflies soaring in flocks would make anyone wandering through a Carboniferous forest feel trapped in a dream or a vivid nightmare. But just a little higher above them, a true aerial predator reigned supreme, Meganeura. This insect could be considered the first dominant airborne hunter in history. While Paleodictyoptera capped out at around 16 to 20 inches, Meganeura stretched to wingspans of 26 to 28 inches, with bodies over 16 inches long, about the size of a modern peregrine falcon. Their giant compound eyes gave them nearly 360-degree vision, detecting even the slightest movement below. Their strong legs carried sharp spines like grappling hooks, perfect for seizing prey in midair. In the skies of the Carboniferous, Meganeura was the ultimate flying predator. No birds, no bats, no real challengers in the skies. These predators had two main strategies: perch silently on a tall tree trunk and wait for prey to pass by, or dive suddenly from above in lightning-fast pursuits. Their main prey was smaller insects, including Paleodictyoptera. The sight of those harmless ancient butterflies helpless in the claws of giant dragonflies was a vivid reminder of nature's brutality, even in such an alien world. The secret that allowed Meganeura and many Carboniferous insects to reach gigantic sizes lay in their unique respiratory system. Insects breathe through a network of tiny tubes called trachea, which deliver air directly to their cells. With oxygen levels 1.5 times higher than today, diffusion through these tubes was far more efficient, enabling bodies to grow much larger without suffocating. If Meganeura tried to live in today's atmosphere, it likely wouldn't even be able to take off with its oversized wings. But the Carboniferous skies weren't just home to Meganeura and Paleodictyoptera. Many other strange early insects appeared. One of the most significant was Rhyniognatha hursti, often considered among the earliest winged insects in history. Though only a few millimeters long, its fossilized mouthparts resembled those of modern dragonflies and beetles. This could be evidence that insects had mastered flight far earlier than once thought, laying the foundation for the age of giant arthropods that followed. And not all insects were harmless. In the canopy, swarms of ancient Orthoptera, distant relatives of today's grasshoppers and crickets, chewed through leaves, their collective buzzing echoing across the forest. That chorus, mixed with the heavy wing beats of Meganeura, created a constant living soundtrack of the Carboniferous. With so many insects filling the air, the forests were always alive, yet also crowded, suffocating, and dangerous. And where there were flying predators, smaller insects had to adapt. By flying faster, developing wing patterns for camouflage, or producing enormous numbers of offspring to make up for losses. These were the first steps in an evolutionary arms race, one that continues among insects to this very day. And this was only the sky. On the ground and in the swamps, even larger and more terrifying monsters were waiting. If the skies of the Carboniferous belonged to giant insects, then the wet, muddy ground was ruled by predators no less fearsome. Every step you took might stir up a scorpion the size of your forearm, a millipede longer than your body, or an amphibian predator lurking beneath the black mud. One of the most striking was Pulmonoscorpius kirktonensis, the breathing scorpion from Scotland. If modern scorpions reaching 6 to 8 inches already make your skin crawl, Pulmonoscorpius would leave you shivering. It grew up to 28 inches long, nearly the size of a newborn baby. Its enormous pincers, coated in armor as tough as steel, could clamp down with enough force to crush the shells of other arthropods. And on its tail arched a deadly stinger, ready to deliver a venomous strike. What made Pulmonoscorpius remarkable wasn't just its size, but its lifestyle. Unlike many modern scorpions that live mainly on dry land, this species also hunted in shallow waters, ambushing amphibians or soft-bodied prey as it lunged from the mud. With compound eyes at the center of its head for depth perception, plus smaller lateral eyes for detecting light, it had keen senses that made escaping its attack nearly impossible. Encountering a scorpion nearly 30 inches long in the dark would make any creature's heart pound, even yours. But even top predators had rivals. On the swampy ground roamed a true many-legged titan that even giant scorpions gave way to, Arthropleura. This colossal millipede stretched up to 8.5 feet long and weighed more than 110 pounds, many times larger than any scorpion. Its body was covered in dozens of armored segments, each nearly 20 inches wide, locking together into a nearly impenetrable shield. As it crawled, it left long, winding tracks in the mud, fossil traces of which can still be found today. Surprisingly, despite its terrifying size, Arthropleura probably wasn't an active predator. Its exact diet remains debated since no complete skull has been found, but evidence suggests it mostly fed on decaying leaves, seeds, and organic matter scattered across the swampy forest floor. Some scientists even call Arthropleura the giant recycler of the Carboniferous, helping to clear the enormous piles of fallen leaves shed by towering clubmoss trees. Still, with its size and armor, no creature would dare challenge it, not even Pulmonoscorpius. Yet the Carboniferous ground wasn't only ruled by insects and arthropods. This was also the age when the first small but revolutionary vertebrates appeared, the earliest reptiles. One of them was Hylonomus, considered the first true reptile in history. At only about 8 inches long, it looked like a small lizard living in hollow logs. Its significance wasn't in its size, but in its reproduction. It laid amniotic eggs. This was a groundbreaking evolutionary invention. Unlike amphibians, which had to lay eggs in water to keep them moist, Hylonomus and other amniotes could lay their eggs on dry land, thanks to a protective membrane that sealed in a watery environment. This freed animals from dependence on water and opened the door to fully conquering the land. The appearance of Hylonomus marked the dawn of the reptile age, a lineage that tens of millions of years later would give rise to the dinosaurs. And alongside Hylonomus, the Carboniferous was still very much a playground for strange and diverse amphibians. One remarkable group was the Loxomatidae, amphibians with unusually large eyes, glowing like bright gems in the dark. They had flat skulls, sharp teeth, and long bodies, lying in wait along swamp edges where shadows concealed every movement. With their oversized eyes, Loxomatidae hunted effectively at night, preying on giant insects resting on leaves or small creatures that wandered too close to the water's edge. Line them all up together. Pulmonoscorpius with its deadly arched stinger, Arthropleura like a living armored train, the tiny yet world-changing Hylonomus, and the lurking Loxomatidae. And you'd see the Carboniferous ground as nothing less than an arena of survival. Each creature represented a different evolutionary strategy. Hunting with venom, defending with armor, expanding life with the amniotic egg, or dominating the night with massive eyes. Together they formed a world both chaotic and wondrous, where no being was ever truly safe, and no ruler held the crown forever. And the most terrifying part? This was only the surface. Beneath the murky swamp waters, even larger and more mysterious predators awaited. Below the dark waters of the Carboniferous swamps lay an entirely different world, wet, shadowy, and equally chilling. Here, creatures half familiar, half alien, part fish, part amphibian, part arthropod, slithered through the mud, ready to seize anything that strayed too close. One of the most fascinating was Megarachne, once mistaken for a giant spider. When its fossil was first uncovered in South America in the late 20th century, paleontologists believed it was the largest spider ever to exist, with a body length of nearly 20 inches. The idea of a colossal spider crawling through Carboniferous forests shocked both science and the public. But after decades of debate, it was revealed that Megarachne was no spider at all, but a sea scorpion, Eurypterid, an ancient relative of scorpions and horseshoe crabs. Even so, Megarachne was enough to stir nightmares. Its body stretched up to 22 inches, with paddle-like limbs for stirring the muddy bottom to snatch worms, insects, or small arthropods. Its hunting relied not on speed but on patience. It often lay buried in soft mud, camouflaged by its dark grey shell. When prey wandered too close, it would sweep its paddles to churn the mud, disorient its victim, and then clamp down with powerful jaws. Most of its meals were crustaceans, insects that had fallen into the water, or small fish, but with its strong exoskeleton and crushing mouthparts, Megarachne could easily overpower young amphibians or small reptiles. If Megarachne was the arthropod nightmare of the water, then Proterogyrinus was the first true glimpse of a primitive crocodile. At around 6.5 feet long, with a slender body, strong limbs, and a laterally flattened tail, it was both a skilled swimmer and a stealthy ambush predator. It often hid near the shore, concealed among reeds, with only its gleaming eyes breaking the water's surface. When a giant insect, an ancient frog, or even a small Helonimus came down for a drink, Proterogyrinus would lunge, sinking its sharp teeth into the victim. With a powerful thrash of its tail, it dragged the prey underwater, drowning it within seconds. The scene looked like a rough draft of the crocodiles we know today. Even stranger was Crassigyrinus, a massive amphibian from Europe. Growing nearly 6 feet long, it had a huge, broad, flattened head filled with dagger-like teeth. Its body resembled that of a fish, with short, weak limbs poorly suited for walking on land. Instead, Crassigyrinus was a dedicated aquatic predator, sliding silently through the dark swamps in search of prey. It hunted fish, aquatic animals, and even smaller amphibians. Because its front limbs were so short, scientists believe it could only lunge quickly in the water to snap at prey, but was unable to chase effectively on land. In the dark of the swampy forests, the massive body and grotesque head of Crassigyrinus must have been among the most terrifying sights of all. If Proterogyrinus and Crassigyrinus reached about 6.5 feet in length, Eogyrinus was even more impressive, stretching up to 15 feet, as long as a small car. This was one of the largest predatory amphibians of the Carboniferous. With its long body, thick skin, and sharp teeth, Eogyrinus became the undisputed ruler of rivers and swamps. It preyed on large fish, giant insects that fell into the water, and even vulnerable young reptiles. Once caught in its massive jaws, almost no creature could escape. In the aquatic world of the Carboniferous, Eogyrinus truly was the king of the swamp. What all these giant amphibians shared was that they represented evolutionary experiments in conquering habitats. They were no longer fully fish, yet not fully adapted to live freely on land like reptiles. Life beneath the water during the Carboniferous was not only frightening, but also rich and complex. Alongside giant amphibians and sea scorpions, there were countless primitive bony fish and lobe-finned fish, the distant ancestors of modern fish and four-legged animals. Some species had already developed primitive lungs, allowing them to surface for air when swamp waters became oxygen poor. This mix of old and new traits created an evolutionary landscape both chaotic and fascinating. But nothing lasts forever. After tens of millions of years of dominance, the strange world of the Carboniferous, with its endless swamps, giant insects, and colossal amphibians, finally came to an end. It wasn't a sudden asteroid impact, but a slow, brutal transformation of climate and environment that silently closed an entire era. Around 305 million years ago, Earth entered a great ice age. The southern hemisphere, especially the supercontinent Gondwana, became covered in massive glaciers stretching for thousands of miles. As ice sheets grew, global sea levels fell, drying out the swamps that had sustained the Carboniferous rainforests. Lush forests, once stretching from Europe to North America, home to giant insects and amphibians, began to shrink, replaced by dry lands and sparse woodlands. This event is known as the Carboniferous rainforest collapse. As the rainforests disappeared, the ecosystems that depended on them began to unravel. Giant insects like Meganeura and Arthropleura lost their humid, oxygen-rich homes. Atmospheric oxygen, which had once peaked near 35%, began to drop, stripping these giants of their evolutionary advantage. Many populations collapsed and some vanished entirely. The heavy wing beats of Meganeura faded from the skies, leaving empty space for smaller creatures to fill. The giant amphibians, once lords of riversides and swamps, also suffered greatly. Dependent on water for reproduction, they struggled as wetlands dried up. The 15-foot Eogarinus and the grotesque-headed Crassigerinus slowly disappeared into history. Some smaller amphibian lineages survived, but they never reclaimed their former dominance. Meanwhile, a much smaller group of animals quietly began to rise, the amniotes, ancestors of reptiles, birds, and mammals. Thanks to their amniotic eggs, they no longer depended on water for reproduction. As the swamps vanished, amniotes gained a decisive advantage. Creatures like Hylonomus spread into the new dry lands, laying the foundation for a new age. As the Carboniferous drew to a close, amniotes were already preparing to become the dominant land animals of the Permian period. Alongside these ecological shifts, Earth itself was changing geologically. The great land masses slowly drifted and fused into the supercontinent Pangaea. This collision of continents raised new mountain ranges, such as the Appalachians in North America, and altered global ocean currents and climate. With Pangaea's vast interior cut off from the sea, the climate became increasingly dry, hot, and seasonal. The humid Carboniferous rainforests, once the icons of the era, could no longer survive. Combined, cooling climate, expanding glaciers, falling oxygen, rainforest collapse, and continental fusion all brought the Carboniferous to its end. The wet, swampy world of giant insects disappeared, replaced by a harsher, drier planet. From the ashes of the coal forests, a new era began, the Permian period, when primitive reptiles, ancestors of dinosaurs and mammals, would take the stage. The Carboniferous remains one of the strangest chapters in Earth's history. Skies buzzing with giant insects, the ground trembling under titanic millipedes, and murky swamps hiding colossal amphibians and venomous scorpions. But changing climates and collapsing forests closed that chapter. The giants vanished, leaving only coal seams and the fragile legacy of amniotic eggs. From those small beginnings, the world of reptiles, and later dinosaurs, mammals, and eventually humans, would emerge. Just imagine, if the Carboniferous had not ended the way it did, would dinosaurs ever have existed? And would we be here to tell this story? If you enjoyed this journey into the Carboniferous, leave a comment and tell us which creature amazed you the most: the giant dragonfly Meganeura, the armored millipede Arthropleura, or the deadly scorpion Pulmonar scorpius. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more explorations into the mysterious prehistoric past.